This particular video is going out to Christians. In 1995, I went through a process. I was baptized in 1993. I really loved Jesus. I loved him so much that I begged my parents to allow me to be baptized. They fought me on it. And in 1995, 2 years after my baptism, when I started to study philosophy, Rome, and the history of the church, I went to the pastor of my church, the man who baptized me, and I asked him to explain himself, why he was saying X when the Bible said B. We had a fantastic 1-hour-long philosophical conversation. This was not the first time I had been to see him. And when it was all done and said, he leaned forward on his desk and he said, "If I tell them the truth, I'll have no job." That was the day I realized a few things. One, the ancient texts are one thing. Two, the Bible, as literally cherry-picked and scripted by the Council of Nicaea and Rome, was a completely different thing. Three, the church was not the Christian religion. Four, the words and teachings of Christ were absolutely separate from all of this garbage. And five, spirituality is not religion. So I'm going to make this very, very clear. I absolutely commend, respect, adore, and honor the teachings, the parables, and the words of Christ. His work, his philosophy is extraordinary. It is very, very true to the same philosophical teachings we see from Plato and Aristotle and Socrates. His work, his insight is absolutely breathtaking. I am a firm believer that a person can believe in Christ, live by Christ's ideals, support his teachings as he said them. And I believe that a person can be a truly decent, beautiful human being if they remove all the other bullshit and just look at the teachings of Christ himself, the words that came out of his mouth. I also know that Christ lived during a time of Roman suppression, which a lot of Christians know nothing about. I know the psychology, the mindset of Rome that Christ was fighting against. I am well aware of what he had to take on. A lot of what Christ did have to say reflected the political turmoil of that time period. And in my opinion, nothing has changed in 2,000 years. That being said, I do not speak out against Christ or his teachings, not at all. I believe that, unfortunately, some really horrific, manipulative, disgusting people used Christ's words to craft and manipulate their own bullshit with their own agenda, to abuse, enslave, dictate, and control. I believe this is very unfortunate. I believe that in the 1600s, when Milton wrote his fiction, a lot of that got muddled into the nightmare that is the religion of Christianity. And again, a lot of Christians are completely unaware of this. This is really where I cannot emphasize to you enough the importance of understanding that the words of Christ are all that matters. Just the words of Christ. Now, I have read the Bible so many times, and I am telling you, the words of Christ, they're solid. But everything else, all the other garbage, is just that, garbage. The problem is it is so contaminated and it has been so doctored that it just reeks of Rome. I commend the ancient texts for what the ancient texts are. I revere them. Those are documentations that have been passed down thousands of years prior to Rome. And the words of Christ are beautiful. They do, in some instances, reflect the political turmoil of the Roman Empire at that time. So some of his words are directed toward Rome. Some are specifically reflected towards Rome. But most of the work of Christ reflects Socrates and Plato. That being said, do your work, do the homework. Look at the difference between the ancient texts, ancienttext.org. You can take a look at everything there. Take a look at the ancient texts. Read the originals prior to Rome's contamination. Take a look at the words of Christ. Those are also available in ancienttext.org, where you can actually see what was said, translated, and also in its original text, if you can translate those languages. When you remove Christ's words, and you do take into account that he was also he was an anarchist. He was a pacifist anarchist. He really was. And when you separate these two things from the conglomerate that is the church doctrine, you get something completely different. So I cannot tell you enough that there is the spirituality of Christ, which I commend. And then there is the religion, which is a fucking toxic filth bath. And that has nothing to do with anything to do with Christ. As far as the other Abrahamic religions, I will say absolutely nothing about them one way or the other. I 100% defer to the ancient texts, and I leave those 100% up for translation. But regarding the Christian religion, that is a filth bath. Now, Christian spirituality, Christ spirituality, now that's something entirely different. And I very strongly acknowledge that there is a huge difference between what Christ said and what he was dealing with regarding the Roman Empire at that time and the shit bath that we have in our culture today. You can keep your Christian spirituality and personalize it however you need. And you also can remove it from the filth that is. I also need to really strongly emphasize that no deity, no God, no spiritualism should ever prevent your growth. And if you are using any kind of a religion or spirituality or role in a community to define your importance, I know for a fact, based off of his own words, that Christ would have a very big problem with that. Christ adored education and teaching. He adored self-love and growth. That's in his words. Using a religion as an emotional prosthetic to hide behind your own fear is not ever what Christ had in mind. And neither do I. Find your resources. Find what you can do. Your resources are not just money. You do not need anyone or anything. You have everything you need. You just need to self-discipline, control your fear, grow your mind, think logically. You can do it. You absolutely can do anything you want. Thank you for your audience, and may the kindest of words always find you.